Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Judith Russ from Adoption in Merseyside. Looking forward to our conversation today, Judith. This is a real special one for me, really.
Yeah, lovely to be here and great to have made the connection with you in the last few months.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. So, listeners, if you haven't heard, I was actually adopted from Merseyside, right? Judith leads adoption in Merseyside, and I was adopted from Merseyside back in February 1967 from the middle of Adoption Council, it was called in the middle of Liverpool, in the centre of Liverpool. So that's Judith's patch, and so that makes it extra special. Also, I'm doing a talk for Judith and her colleagues at a service day in Liverpool next week. So that'll probably be that only like the second or third time I've been back to Liverpool since since February 1967. So this all makes it extra special for me.
Right, great.
Yeah. So the key question, right? What does we love to start with this one, Judith. What does thriving mean to you as a human being, as a leader, as a wife? What does it mean to you?
I think for me, thriving means having your needs met, whether you're a child or an adult, and being able to aspire to do some of the things that you would want to do in your life. Um, I think for me, as a parent, my children now are adults, but to see them achieve independence and follow their interests and now have healthy relationships as adults, I think is all part of thriving. And I think that's what I aspire to do in my job, is really at the moment in adoption in Merseyside to help children to thrive and help adoptive families to thrive and offer support where necessary to get to that. I think it probably means different things to different people as well. Um, but I think it's about being able to live your life well,
Yeah,
be healthy and constructive and positive in your outlook.
yeah. I love the breadth of that, Judith. It gives me lots to look at. I'm we talk about thriving, and it is very different, and it means very different things to very different people, and that's a good thing because otherwise we wouldn't have had 650 odd episodes of this podcast. If
Mm.
everybody thought it would be the same, we would have only done one, and everyone would be
Yeah.
exactly the same, and clearly it isn't. So if we kind of narrow down that lens to thriving adoptees, what what does that mean to you rather than this broader picture? What about the adoptees? What if we put that limitation there?
Think probably the first thing that springs to mind is to thrive, children who are adopted need that sense of belonging. That's what we hope to achieve with adoption, is for children to know that they have a lifelong family who love them and promote their needs and their identity. I think that is probably the base of any other things that a child might want to achieve in their life. So education, um, any relationships that they want to move on into, whether that's family relationships or adult relationships. I think that's that base of being loved and being wanted and being secure, knowing that you've got people around you who are committed to you, is the basis of thriving, really. And that's where your really good mental health stems from, isn't it? I think.
Yeah. So you're talking about the basis thing here, the
Mm.
fundamental, the grounding. for everything else.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think grounding's a good word. Um, all the other bits, if you like, follow on from that. So,
Yeah,
whether children feel secure in their identity, thinking about their history, they need that secure base to move on from. Um, in terms of education, we know that children will only thrive in education if they're supported at home, and that they've got that flexibility around them to have somebody to advocate for them.
yeah,
So I think, yeah, grounding is probably a really good way to put it.
yeah. And and what have you learned about what helps adoptees feel grounded then?
I think really it's about having adults who themselves feel secure and can embrace uncertainty as things move forward. I do go back to my own experience as a step parent. So I'm not an adopter and I don't have adopted children, but I do have an adult stepdaughter. And I remember how difficult and challenging it was to maintain the relationships with her mother and then later siblings when our daughter was very young. And I think I bring that experience into the adoption world, really, in terms of those are similar sorts of relationships to manage and manage mental health in the background and manage different sibling needs. And one of our daughter's siblings was later placed with a grandparent. We didn't know that grandparent. We had to negotiate those relationships. So I think it is about the adults being able to I suppose, find something they can identify with in their own family situation. And then that brings that experience to any challenges they might face with an adopted child.
Yeah. So what have you learned about your own grounding? Because what you're saying is that we have to be grounded if the kids are going to feel grounded, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know, actually. I don't think I've really thought about it. Um, I suppose if I feel as though I've mixed the personal and professional over the years that as a social worker, I had some training in terms of attachment theory. And I brought that to bear with my experience as a parent. So I think that's what has grounded me really has been um, my own experience, my relationship with my mother, and then growing up as an adult and training as a social worker. I think all of that really helped me to feel grounded as well as you can be
Yeah.
as an adult. Doesn't mean to
Yeah.
say you get it right every time, does it?
No, no,
But it's
no.
the ability to work through issues when they arise.
Yeah. I think it's one of those. The thing that pops into my head is something that somebody suggested to me. I'm not quite sure. Maybe it was a guest on the podcast. She said, "Well, you need to kind of understand your own attachment style, and
Mm,
your and you can do, and it's hard to know that because we live with ourselves 24/7, right?
mm,
It's kind of that it's that self-awareness piece, and what that person on the back of that, I think I did an online questionnaire to understand my own attachment style, which can give you a it can give you a new perspective on
mm,
yourself. Because, as one of my mentors once said to me years ago, it's hard to see the picture when we're in the frame.
mm,
So that kind of that self-awareness piece is crucial to our attachment. It's crucial to our emotional intelligence as well. So I remember listening to an emotional intelligence, yeah, no, reading an emotional intelligence book on holiday years and years ago, and it always starts with us, and any relationship is it's about our grounding. We can
Mm,
influence ourselves far easier than we can influence somebody else. So it all starts with us, our level of our understanding of our attachment style, our understanding of our own emotional intelligence, and these kind of like these online questionnaires can help us do that in a safe in a safe space,
mm,
and that's immediate, right? You do the questionnaire, you get the results. Nobody else sees the results. You can agree with them or disagree with them to your heart's content. So we can do this if we haven't done it as part of our social worker training that like
mm,
that you have. We can do it kind of on our own, off our own back, given what the internet offers us.
yeah.
So what does that self-awareness piece mean to you as a parent, as a leader, as a wife? What's that about for you? What does self-awareness mean to you?
I think it means trying to understand the other person's perspective. So I think for me, it's not about navel gazing, i.e., am I good at this? Am I good at that? Or um, kind of what about me in a situation? It's more about um, I've got this challenge in front of me relating to another person. So how can I better understand where they are? And if I can better understand that, then I can adjust my approach to the situation. Um, so I think I am quite reflective and think through things, and I think that's part of being self-aware, really, isn't it? Um, to try to actually see things from different angles and not be too blinkered on a particular way forward. Um, but I do think if you can reduce conflict in situations, if you can put yourself in the shoes of somebody else, and I try and bring that to my work as well as home life.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm the metaphor that's coming to me is kind of like empathy is the lubricant for
Mm,
relationships.
yeah, yeah,
It
absolutely.
helps them
Mm.
move more smoothly. So what have you learned about understanding the kind of the adoptee experience? And clearly, there's not just one experience. So maybe ask you a better question. What have you learned about understanding the adoptees, the adopted child or young person's their experience of
Mm.
life? What have you learned about that?
I think in recent years, I've been much more aware of the impact of really early life experiences. And we know a bit more now about research into even the impact of domestic violence, for instance, when a baby's in the womb, and stresses on pre-birth situations. I don't think years ago I really had appreciated the impact um, for very young children. And I think still people assume, well, they were placed when they were a young baby. Um, so we don't really understand why there's the challenges that there are. But I think now we know a lot more. And that's one of the things that I've learned about how much even very young children are impressionable and have emotional memories, even if they can't articulate verbally what those memories are. So I guess that's one of the things. The other thing that I think I would say I have really learnt probably over the last 10 years is the importance of um, preserving some links with birth families, and actually just even having information available um, for young people if they want to access birth information. I'm really struck. I do some signing off of birth records when there's an access request for birth records. And going back to those children adopted in the 60s and 70s, there's hardly anything in terms of their birth information compared with now, where we have really substantial documents with birth family information and health information. And there's such a marked contrast with a few forms and a few letters that might be on a file from the 60s. Um, and trying to make sure that all that information is written in a truthful but positive way for children to access and understand more of their history.
Yeah,
I think it's a really important part of our work.
yeah. Because one of the things that adoptees is common, a lot of adoptees is questions, right?
Mm,
They weren't for me, right? It's not not every adoptee has those questions growing up. Um, One of the things here is about, I think it's about ambiguity, and be, the degree to which we are okay with
mm,
ambiguity. You took these days, there's a lot more. The files are a lot thicker than they were
mm,
back in the 60s and 70s. Though saying that, I've got the note. I've got my file with the notes from the social worker interviewing my birth mother, and
mm,
all sorts of all sorts of correspondence. So it's not particularly thick, the file, but it's got some very. I guess it's about the quality.
mm,
It's about quality as well as quantity. So the
yeah,
quantity is low, but the quality the insights that I got, the learnings that I had from that file were quite rich. Um, I I think if we've got that, we've talked about how we are and our grounding as a driver. What was our ability to help our kids ground. You know, like people talk about modeling, don't they? So
mm,
we want to kids do what we do, not what we say. So it's about our in this context to me, it sounds like it's about being okay with ambiguity. And I'm wondering if what you've learned about that, because as a leader, you've got to be okay with ambiguity
mm.
and be grounded. If you're going to steer the ship, right, we've got to be that. We've got to model it for our people. We're going to model it for our colleagues. We're going to model it for our kids, for the young people. What have you learnt around that ambiguity thing?
I think what comes to mind, really, thinking about that word, is the ambiguity that still lingers when we're doing assessments of adults who want to be adoptive parents. And they go through a really rigorous process of interviews, really, with the social workers. And at the end of it, that there's still a lack of knowledge of how will this person parent. So we put our best skills to it and expertise, and look at their histories and talk through what issues they may come across, and the joys of being an adoptive parent and the challenges of being adopters. Um, but even then, until children are in the family home, they don't know and we don't know how that will work through. So I think for me, that's a really big area of ambiguity that we just have to hold. Um, and in some senses, that's the same for any person becoming a parent. Until you're actually in this scenario, you don't know what your reactions will be. You don't know how your health will be. You don't know what the pathway will be for any particular child. Um, so that for me, that's what ambiguity. We just have to hold that and work with that and accept that that's part of the process.
Yeah. I guess that's life, right? Ambiguity.
Mm,
The whole, we don't know how it's going to turn out.
no.
Um, you talked a few minutes ago about youngsters being able to articulate
Mm,
what they can't fully remember. And I was in an adoption uh, at an Adoption England conference in London a couple of years ago, and when it struck me that one of the biggest challenges that adoptive parents have is their children's behaviour,
mm,
uh, and one of the biggest challenges adoptees have is our behaviour,
mm,
because we often for people adopted young, like I was 5 weeks old when I left when I left Liverpool in 1960, February 1967. We can't remember this stuff
mm,
is the trauma is pre-verbal, it's pre-memory. We can't remember it. So we're both in the same boat, both the
mm,
parents and the kids, and teens and adults, right? That we're in the same boat, that we can't remember the we can't remember the loss.
mm.
Um, so so that points to ambiguity again, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
our ability, but but for somehow it seems very poignant to me that we
Mm.
the stuff that we can't, the loss that we can't remember, and yeah, I'm struggling to put it into words.
Yeah, and one of the phrases that I often think about is I don't know where I've read it from or heard it, is behavior is a language. And I think that's what we're striving to understand when we're supporting families is they're dealing with some challenges of a particular child's behavior. But what is that? What does that mean? What is that child telling us by the way they're behaving, and how can we meet that need? And that's a real challenge to work that out, isn't it? Um, but that early separation, I think years ago, people would have thought, oh, a 5-week-old baby, that's quite a straightforward adoption. Kind of, I don't think we think that anymore now because we know that there is that non-verbal loss and trauma, um, and kind of memories that are there because that child right from birth and before birth has got some memories, but they're not memories that are at the surface that can be talked about, but they've made an impact somewhere.
Yeah. We're going to look at this. We're going to look at this next week, Judith. This when I do the talk with you next Wednesday. But for the listeners, I think the the key thing for me is our ability. Well, is our understanding of adults as what drives behavior, and what helps us explain that to our kids or
Mm,
teens. Uh, so and why we can't understand it. So, but before I was before I came into the kind of the adoption space, doing the podcast and trainings and those sorts of things, like 5.5 years ago, I worked did workshops in primary schools, or what the Americans would call it, elementary schools, about this stuff
Mm,
with kids. And I would explain to kids as young as kind of 8. And I think on occasion we did some events with public events with kids of a younger age. Understand that uh, ha what we do is driven by how we feel, and how we feel is driven by what we think. So our thoughts create our feelings, create our behaviors. And most of the time, we don't we can't see those thoughts, and we can't remember the thoughts because we can't remember the what happened to us. So the thoughts are subconscious. We can't see them. So some things, an invisible thought is driving
mm,
a feeling that we're feeling is driving a behavior. So I I think for me big one of the big issues around this area is we can do one of two things with others' behavior. We can try and change it, or we can try and educate our kid, our teen, to understand why we as human beings behave the way that we do. And
mm,
then once that once that child understands why they do what they do, they're in a better position to actually change
mm.
themselves. So this is about empowering kids to change rather than us trying to change them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the fact that feelings drive actions, and thoughts drive feelings, and that we have 70,000 thoughts a day, right? So we don't see every one of them that goes into the place. Yeah.
Mm.
What do you make of that, Judith?
Um, I think it's quite a complicated concept to explain to children. Um, and I think thinking about teenagers as well, on one level, because of all of the other changes for children as a teenager, their hormones and their peer pressures and all of that, even if they understand that head knowledge, um, it's still really difficult because their behavior is driven by impulse in the moment. Um, but you hope that they'll come out of the other end really into more mature adults. I think the challenge, the real challenge for every parent is um, keeping that secure base and managing our own emotions as the adults in that scenario. Um, and not being as reactive as we might naturally feel to a behavior that we think isn't
Yeah,
appropriate.
yeah,
And I think that's a real challenge that not only adoptive families face, but many parents face. But I think perhaps for adoptive children, those teenage years are doubly difficult because of their earlier
yeah,
experiences.
yeah. It's a human issue, isn't it?
Mm.
Responding rather than reacting,
Yeah, yeah.
going with the impulse. So opening up that space between stimulus and response, what somebody says or does, and what we do, what we do back to them, right? I'm thinking of playground stuff here, right? He made me do that.
Yeah.
or no, he didn't make you do that. Your thought made you do that. Or, it's one of those jobs, like, because we're brought up in a world that where we're told that the outside world determines our thoughts and feelings
Mm.
rather than our feelings being seen as a as an inside as an inside job.
Yeah, and I think one of the other thoughts that I have on that is you can't change somebody else, no matter who they are, your own children or other adults or professionals or whoever it is. You can't change what they will do. You can only change your response to it, which may change what
Yeah,
happens because that interaction then changes. Um, but really, it's about how we respond to situations rather than saying somebody else must change. We
yeah,
can only really control what's
yeah,
within our own
yeah,
control.
yeah. What do you make of this response react biz issue? Because it's big for every human being. It's big for every parent. It's big for adoptive parents. What do you see around this?
I suppose for me, we can only respond in a balanced way to a situation if we're getting our own needs met. So, when we come across in AIM very tired and exhausted parents, who, understandably then don't react as well as they would want to in a situation, and get stuck in a cycle with their teenager of confrontation and conflict. Um, but ultimately, if the adults are not getting support for themselves, um, then I don't think any adult can respond as well
Yeah,
as you might want to. Um, and I guess the opportunity as well to reflect on situations. So when something hasn't gone well, if you have got a supportive person that you can then talk to and um, kind of just think about, well, what happened then? Why did I react that way? And what could I do differently another time? I think that's really important. Um, but again, it's just not always possible. And I don't think, I've always felt as a parent not to be too self-critical. Have I done the best I could in a particular day? Um, and if I have, then that's good enough. And if I haven't, well, don't beat myself up and, tomorrow's another day.
yeah,
So it is it's hard to maintain that equilibrium, isn't it? And I don't pretend that I've always managed that, but that I think that's what keeps us healthy is striving to have that
yeah,
reflection on things.
yeah. What are what are some of the things you've learned about what the that inner critic are what are some of the things that the inner critic in adoptive parents' heads tell them?
Um, that's an interesting question. I don't think I've really thought about that. Um, to be honest, I think an inner critic, um, perhaps for adopters, is somehow we're not good enough. We're not the same as other parents. Um, this child is struggling because of things that are outside of our control, so we can't change that. I suppose there's lots of voices there from an inner critic. Um, our family members are telling us to be stricter, and actually, what we've learnt is we need to handle our child in a different way. Um, so I think there could be a whole range of voices
Yeah, yeah.
for them.
But not good enough is
Mm,
it is the voice of every is in
yeah,
a it's everybody's inner critic says you're not good enough, and
mm,
it just the end of the sentence differs, but the start of the sentence is always the same. I think one of
Yeah.
the great things about community, so adopters or adoptees, um, people coming together, they realise that their inner critic isn't unique.
Mm.
Other people think think that way. As other people have an inner critic that says the same, that says some to say same things, and there's a relief there that they're not going mad.
Yeah, I was just thinking that that's a reassurance, isn't it, really? To know that you're not alone,
You're not
and
alone.
it's not about you.
No.
That some of these things are normal and some of these things are shared by other people.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things on the slides next week is about something I heard from Gabor Mate, a trauma guy. Have you come across him, Gabor Mate?
No, no, I
Mhm.
haven't.
He's a, I think he was born in, born somewhere, Prague or somewhere somewhere in Europe, but he works in Vancouver now, in Canada, I think. Um, he talks about the feeling of not being good enough actually being a belief that we're not good enough. And
Mm,
for me, the distinction between those two things, i.e., feelings and beliefs, a feeling and a belief, is huge because it's very hard to change our feelings.
mm,
It's a lot easier for our beliefs to be changed through an insight, right? So the insights such as other people feel the same way
mm,
as me. I'm not going mad, and we can unpick
mm,
unpick beliefs, or beliefs can be changed through insights such as that in a way that feelings can't.
mm. And I've just remembered something, thinking about, well, how do you counter that inner critic? Um, and what makes the difference? And I had some coaching a few years ago, professional coaching in relation to work. And one of the things that we were talking through really well, what were the qualities I might bring to a leadership role? Um, and I had a picture in my mind of I don't know if you know the story of Joseph from the Bible, and he had a multicolored coat. Um, and I'd remembered that from going to Sunday school as a child, but I had this picture of a jeweled coat, and I was putting it on, and every jewel was a positive quality that I could say I had an attribute, if you like. Um, and I know it probably sounds a bit weird to people listening to this, but um, that's what I've taken with me. And if I'm feeling vulnerable in a situation and the inner critic might say, you're not up to this, you're not up to this job, or whatever it is, I try and remember the jeweled coat and put it on. And I've even actually gone to job interviews wearing a really brightly coloured shirt with lots of different colours on because in my mind that was answering the inner critic to,
Yeah,
forget about the things that I'm not so good at, but bring the things you are good at.
yeah,
And actually remember those.
yeah,
I don't know why I suddenly thought of that
yeah,
then, but that was just what popped back into my mind. I haven't thought about
yeah,
that for a while.
yeah. It's the power. It's the power of what works.
Mm,
Power of what works for us. I think for me and the inner critic, we can fight it, or we can ignore it. Or we
mm,
can rise above it. It's it's about, oh, there it goes again. You know, there
mm.
it become. a mentor of mine used to be saying, what if we treat the innovate? Yeah, what did he say? Um, what if it becomes a voice that we no longer listen to?
Mm.
Because when we try and fight it, it prolongs the battle.
Yeah,
Ignoring it,
I'm not sure about no longer listening to it. I suppose there's a bit still for me about, is it telling me something that I could do something about? Um, and in that sense, can it be a constructive
constructive
critique?
critique. Yeah,
Um, but if it becomes overwhelmingly negative, then I think it's about
yeah,
rising above it, really,
yeah,
um, and challenging myself to say that that's actually not the truth. That voice isn't
yeah,
telling me the truth. That and there are other things that are what I believe about myself that
yeah,
is different.
yeah. This is a guy called Richard Wilkins used to say, what if the inner critic became an opinion that I no longer value?
Mm,
Good distinction between
interesting.
constructive, yeah. Good distinction between a constructive inner critic, and and just a moaner, just a
Yeah,
negative
yeah,
nanny or whatever. Like
yeah.
there's a big difference. I had one of those last night I was thinking about something. I thought, well, maybe this is something that I need to act on.
Mm,
Sometimes it is alerting to us to an area that we can improve, and sometimes it's just the regular soundtrack we've been hearing for the last 20 years.
yeah, yeah.
One of the things that
Mm,
I've learned is, because I've done a lot of learnings around this area amongst pretty much all my learnings in this area have been with non-adoptees, and we and when I say this to other adoptees, they'll say, yeah, so I'll say that it's not us. It's not adopted people that we don't have the monopoly on um, low self-worth. And if I say that to a fellow adoptee, they'll say, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then there'll be a but. Yeah, but we've got it worse.
right.
And yeah, we've got our beliefs have got more scaffolding around them.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
That's quite a tough one to live with, isn't it, though? I think.
I think it's one of those things where um, vulnerability is really important.
Mm,
So and can make a connection. So uh, me and my wife haven't got any kids, but I've done a lot of work with kids, and through that, I've learned that uh, sharing how I felt about life when I was that age, how I felt about being bullied at their age can be really powerful in terms. You talked about empathy
mm,
earlier on. We talked and having being vulnerable enough to share what we went through when we were their age. I got the impression that, and I did sessions with like a couple of thousand kids. I got the feeling that that was quite unusual for an adult to do,
mm,
but incredibly powerful. So when I would share share that part of the workshop, the hum of the classroom would go, and background hum. You could hear a pin drop when I talked about the the inner critic and
mm,
my experience of being bullied and how that had how I had believed what a bully said to me and how
yeah,
and then how I'd realised that that wasn't true. I think vulnerability it's the same. It's almost the same kind of thing as the when we talked about being in community and sharing with other people how we feel and realizing that they feel the same as us.
mm,
We realize that we're not going mad. Sharing with our kids about how we feel when they're age, and uh, similar kind of self doubt or whatever the issue is, it empowers the child and it builds empathy and relationship.
mm.
Well,
Yeah, it kind of just touching on bullying though, the impact of um what is said and the words that we remember. And sometimes perhaps we underestimate verbal bullying. Um, and people tend to think about, well, what if, oh, it's just name calling or um, it's just things that kids say to each other. But actually, it can stick and be quite lasting in terms of the memories of things that were said to us as a child.
yeah, and that was one of the things that we talked earlier on about this idea that and truth that feelings come from thought. So feelings are an inside job,
Mm,
uh, and that helping kids realize that, like these 8 to 11-year-old kids that I worked with, was
mm,
incredibly powerful, and they they learnt that truth far easier than I learnt it.
mm,
They were far quicker. They were far quicker on the uptake of that. They're far quicker than me and adults adults in general. You know, like I don't know if I told this story recently in the podcast, but go to the when we go to the swimming pool, there's a volunteer that works on a Monday, and I say how sometimes I say how you doing, and she'll look out of the window to check the weather um, before she answers the question, and she will
mm,
say something. I'm as good as the weather. So we've got this cultural idea that the external weather
in
determines
external.
our internal
Mm,
weather, and adults have bought into that, but kids haven't.
mm,
Kids don't buy it. Kids haven't bought into that until they do. So you see kids when we were kids, like you jumping around in puddles in the rain, and
yeah.
then I'm thinking of this. There's a I think sorry listeners if you're in the States you won't know this about. There's a comedian called Peter Kay, who British comedian
Mm,
from the northwest where Judith is,
yeah.
rather than the northeast of England where I'm, and he talks about this the monitor in the school playground, the school play yard. I don't know what they call it in the States, and this adult, the playground monitor, sees some bits of rain starting to fall and shouts, "It's spitting!" And there's this idea that a little bit of rain is going to cause all this damage, and
Mm,
we've got to get inside because otherwise we're going to go get wet, and this whole big myth that everybody buys into that the that the weather determines how
Yeah.
we feel. It's just, yeah,
Yeah.
kids haven't
I
bought
don't
into
know if
that.
that's a British thing really or not. I'm not sure. Um,
I think it's a global thing.
yeah,
I think it's a global thing. And I went to a conference once in the States, and obviously the States is way bigger than us, right? It's 3,000 miles across. We're like what 300 miles across
yeah,
at the front. Yeah. So their weather changes. Their weather is far more diverse
yeah.
than British weather, and I thought it was just Brits that were obsessed with the weather, but
I do.
the things because we get a group of Americans together at a national conference. They've got these far diverse um, weather to talk about. And so that's what they talk about. Oh, I couldn't live there. It's too cold. Couldn't live there. It's too hot. And like, oh, yours is better. Our better is our weather is better than yours. All the different things. But yeah, it is a global thing. I think that we as adults we believe that the external weather
Yeah.
determines the internal weather. Um, so I guess we're coming up on time here, Judith. Is there anything that you'd like to share that I've not asked you about?
No, I don't think so. It's been a fairly wide-ranging kind of conversation, hasn't it?
Yeah,
Um, but I suppose um, one of the things I do think in terms of leading the service is how valuable everybody's diverse experience is. Um, and we all bring something of ourselves to our professional life. Um, and I think that's probably as professionals involved in this field, we're all bringing our personal experiences as well,
yeah,
which I think is great. It gives us quite a breadth, which hopefully is helpful to the children and the adopters that we work with.
yeah, yeah. Thank you, Judith, and thank you, listeners. We'll speak to you again very soon. Take care. Bye bye.